Welcome to Santiago in Chile. Now, there has of course been the most amazing real-life drama that's unfolded in Chile recently. I'm referring to the 33 miners that were stuck underground for 3 months at the San Jose mine. Now, until very recently, the capsule that successfully brought all 33 of them up to their safety was displayed outside the government building just around the corner here. The government, of course, trying to claim as much credit as possible for their safe rescue, but the fact of the matter is that it's to the government's shame that the miners were down there in the first place. You see, safety inspectors closed down that mine in 2007, saying that it was completely unsafe to work in. But management just reopened it, completely ignoring all of the safety recommendations. The Chilean government, currently led by Chile's richest man, said nothing. And although the 33 miners were rescued and brought to safety, a greater number of other miners have died this year alone in other less well-reported incidents. So why aren't Chilean miners better protected by labour law? Why aren't the trade unions strong enough to insist on better, safer working conditions? Well, to answer those questions, we need to take a quick look at Chile's recent political past. Now, you remember how in the 1980s in Britain, Thatcher made it much more difficult for workers to organise and to legally go on strike. And she also got rid of a lot of legislation which compelled employers to meet certain standards in terms of the way that workers are treated. Well, Thatcher got her inspiration from what was going on here in Chile. Now, the story begins in 1970 with the election of Salvador Allende as leader of the Popular Unity government. Now, Allende is described in the press at the time as Chile's first Marxist president, but in fact he's not a Marxist at all. Economically, he's more of a Keynesian. That is to say, he wants to nationalise a couple of industries and to increase public spending in order to stimulate the economy, but he wants to do those things very much within the existing framework of capitalism. But Allende is the figurehead of a working class movement which is growing in confidence and combativity, and which is starting to organise itself through the cordones, which are a type of workers' council that linked the major workplaces throughout Santiago. Now, the rich of Chile didn't like these developments at all, and they started to do everything they could to bring down the government and smash the workers' movement. But rather than encouraging the workers' self-organisation, Allende tried to put the brakes on the workers' movement, and he issued all sorts of reassurances to the rich, naively thinking that the rich themselves would respect the law and the wishes of parliamentary democracy. In fact, on the 11th of September 1973, a combined military operation led by Augusto Pinochet toppled the Allende government. Salvador Allende himself was killed, and in the weeks that followed, another 30,000 Chileans were also killed, among them the best student leaders, the best trade unionists, and some of the most militant workers. Behind me is a memorial to some of those people. I've got some flowers that I'm going to lay. After the coup, Pinochet, the mass murderer and torturer, took control of Chile. Margaret Thatcher described him as being a great friend. With all the opposition either dead or in exile, Chile became the perfect testbed for a new economic policy, sometimes known as neoliberalism. The emphasis was on the central role of the market, deregulation and the dismantling of workers' organisations. It was a model that was soon rolled out to much of the rest of the world. Since the experiment in neoliberalism began, the rich have certainly got richer, but the rest of us across the developed world and beyond have seen our wages and living standards fall consistently. The gap between the rich and the poor has increased dramatically, and although it's the 21st century, many workers, like the Chilean miners, have to risk their lives every day just to put bread on the table. As we make our way to Buenos Aires, 3 thoughts occur to me about the Chilean story. The first is that when politicians talk about exporting democracy to other countries, quite often what they really mean is that they want to impose a particular economic model which only got a foothold in this world because democracy had been smashed. The second is that reforms passed through Parliament will never be enough to fundamentally transform the world. The moment that the rich feel that their interests are significantly threatened, they will move to try and undermine and get rid of the source of that threat, even if it's a democratically elected government. We need to be ready to confront them, not only at the ballot box, but also in our workplaces, communities, and on the streets. And finally, when an opportunity does come along to fundamentally change the world, to make it a better, more democratic place, we need to decisively seize that opportunity and not be held back by reformist leaders who only realise too late just how high the stakes are.